Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Prep Your Standard NATO. Today's guest is Travis Hocart from Kokoda Crossing. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks, Ashayla. Thanks for having me.
Travis, you aren't military, but you did serve in the emergency services, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, I started my career with the West Australian Police, and I spent 8.5 years with them, and finished up with 4 years at the Tactical Response Group.
Yeah.
Following which, I went over to Iraq and worked as a private security contractor in 2004, just after the war had finished. Initial war had finished.
Yep.
And spent a few months over there. Then I came home and I joined the Australian Federal Police and worked 7.5 years as a Federal Air Marshal on the planes providing aircraft security.
Right.
Which was in response to the 2001 attacks in America.
Yep. So basically you're a badass.
Yeah, similar. So I've had a lot of, I suppose I've worked with a lot of military people as well, done a lot of training with the specialist squads that I was involved with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right, okay, so you definitely hold your own in any conversations with the military personnel, wouldn't you?
No, it's a good world. I enjoy talking about it, so it's great.
It is an interesting world, isn't it? It's very different to anything a civilian can come up with.
Well, that's the thing. It's with police and military. You get a lot of questions from civilians because it's a world they just don't know about.
Yeah, they can't even fathom it, really.
You know, they see movies and TV programs and documentaries, but because they haven't lived it or experienced it, they want to know. They really want to know stuff about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm happy to talk about that sort of stuff.
You're not one of those pain in the ass people when it comes to movies, are you? You're like, oh, you wouldn't fucking do that.
No, it's more like I wish I could do that.
Just John McClane off the side of a building or something, yeah.
That's right, exactly.
So, how the heck did this lead to a tourism business?
Well, my initial interest in military history started when I was 10, and my grandfather took me to see Gallipoli when it first came out. And from that moment, I was very much intrigued by military history, particularly Australian military history. And that stayed with me for a number of years. And I remember my history teacher at school actually gave me a book on Gallipoli because he knew what my interest was. Yeah. And he signed it for me. And his name was John Arkell from Hale School. And he signed this book for me, and I've still got that to this day.
Great.
So I had a very strong interest in military history from that age. But I didn't. I walked the track in 2009. The Kokoda track. I first walked it in 2009, and at that point, the company I went with offered me the chance to come back and work as a guide, which I jumped at.
Yep.
I love the story, and I just love the country. I love the people we worked with there, and the whole thing resonated with me, really intensely. So I went back and I worked as a guide for this company, and that was a prelude to starting my own trekking business, Kokoda Crossing.
Great. Did you have any family that served in that area during World War II?
I did. I had my grandfather from Mum's side, Colin Thompson, who was a corporal. He served in the 10th Ordnance, mainly around Port Moresby. His brother, Captain Cliff Thompson, he was in the 2nd 14th Battalion, so he served actually on the track.
Yep.
And at one point there, he was the adjutant to Brigadier Arnold Potts, who was running the campaign for a few weeks at that stage. So that's my family connection to the track. My father's dad, James Spencer Hocart, he was a sergeant, and he served in Tobruk before he was medically discharged following that campaign. So it's a good family connection, which I've tried to learn more about as we've gone along. But it's hard to extract that information because a lot of it wasn't passed down to their kids.
Yes.
So that's always been hard for me because at this stage of my life and my career, I want to know more about what they did, but that information just isn't there from their descendants necessarily because they didn't talk about it. A
lot of it's not even there in the records. I know that I'm trying to find out on my grandpa because he was in World War II he was a sapper in the same kind of area, and there's a whole year of his record that just is nothing written down, but I know he was there. Yeah. So you've got to try and track down that information. It's very difficult.
I know. And those records are actually always hard to read as well.
Yes.
Have you noticed?
I've got the handwriting. It's beautiful, but I don't know what it says.
Beautiful cursive script, but you just can't quite make it out.
You just get out the typewriter, mate, and just go down on it.
Yeah, I know. It's hard. It's hard to find the information. So I guess I'm on a journey where I'm trying to pick up as much as I can, and the more I learn about those units over there and what they did, the more I can sort of piece it together.
Have you been to any of the spots that you know that they were at?
Really, I know that Cliff Thompson, my great uncle, he was on the track.
Yep.
And there's a famous photo of him and Brigadier Potts and a few other officers standing around, but I'm not too sure exactly where that was taken. But my assumption, which is always, dangerous to make assumptions, but we're pretty sure it was on the track at some point. Mm-hmm. So Cliff was on the track. He was definitely on the track because that's where Pops was, and that's where he was working for him at the time. Mm-hmm. So I like to think as I walk along the track that perhaps he was in that vicinity, or he was at that battle site. It's up to my imagination, really, to think about where he could be, and I take that with me every time I do a crossing. Yeah.
So you probably have quite a few people that come do the trek that have family connections, right?
Some do, but it's rare to get people who have direct family connections to the actual track.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So a lot of them have family that have served perhaps in other parts of New Guinea during the war, because the fighting in New Guinea went up until toward the end of the war, basically. So it's rare to find direct connections to the track, which I suppose is not, it's probably not unusual when there were a limited amount of soldiers actually fought on the track, I suppose, to some extent. You've got a couple of different brigades that fought there, so it wasn't a huge amount, but it's fantastic when you do have someone that says, we think we've got an uncle or great uncle that perhaps served here. You think, that's really good. So you hopefully make that trip quite special for them as well.
I've found that Kokoda, a lot of people talk about it in the same way that people talk about Gallipoli. It's one of our meccas of military history. Do you find that people, when they come, they just, they have that respect for the track? Or
100%, yeah. And I think with the people that come and trek with me, Kokoda seems to be a really good filter. Yep. It's a natural filter, and it's people who are motivated, and they want to know about the story. But there's also different motivations for coming, I think, as well. So, for example, I had a doctor who's come with me. He's come with me several times now.
Well done, mate.
yeah, and he's 64 years old. So
holy cracky, okay.
Yeah, he's done it. He's knocked it out 7 times. So
jeez,
he's a true warrior, and he's admitted to me early days that the actual history of the track wasn't his main motivation. He wanted to go and challenge himself, and he'd heard how hard it was. But then when he'd started hearing about all the stories, and I recite a lot of diary entries from soldiers as well, that's captivated him. So his motivation is different now, and he appreciates that story that much more. So most people come and they've got a thirst for the knowledge. They want to know what happened, and they want to see where it happened, and that's huge motivation for me, is to take them on that journey, because it's not easy.
Yeah, you hear about the campaign, you read about the campaign, and they kind of describe it, but I've never been there. What is the track actually like?
Yeah, it's people will get blown away by how hard it is. I think, compared to, they look at it and they put themselves in the war situation and go, right, if I was in a situation, being shot at and having to carry wounded comrades, how would I cope? And they just can't believe it. The terrain is just phenomenal. It really is incredible. It's a very doable track, so people shouldn't be daunted in coming and doing it. It's all about professional preparation, and I spend a lot of time with my clients preparing them and taking them up some great bushwalks and whatnot. Yep. But people, they just get blown away by the terrain. It's such a beautiful place. That's the thing, and no day is the same. And you walk around the corner and the vegetation's different. The track changes. You could be walking on tree roots for an hour or so, or you could be in ankle deep mud. The terrain changes every second, so you can never walk along relaxed.
Right.
You always have to be looking down at your feet, because there's always that trip hazard. You just never know where you can go over.
So what would you say would be the hardest part of the track?
I think, for me, is probably the long descents. Going downhill hurts me physically. Yep. Because it does put a fair bit of pressure on your knees and your feet to go downhill. Right. Yep. Some people find it harder to go uphill. And it's that mental battle of backing up day after day. Yep. So most of my treks last for 8 days. Some will go
long
for
trek.
9. Yeah, so after that first day, and you've managed to knock out the first hill, a lot of people go, geez, I've got 7 more days of this. So that it's the mental challenge that people have, I find. So every day's tough. There's no real easy days. There's always a good hill to go up or a good hill to go down. So I think that there's no easy part of it. It's just consistently, tough and challenging.
Right, okay. So how do you prepare people for this kind of trek?
First of all, it's the mental preparation. And I explain to them that this is tough, and you've got to respect where you're going. You have to respect the environment you're going into. And not many people can just rock up and complete it safely. And I'm all about that safe preparation, that safe completion of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I explain to them it's going to be hard and you have to prepare physically, and I want to see that preparation. So I monitor their training as they go through. There are some really good training venues, and being based here in Perth, we've got Kings Park nearby, which is fantastic. You've got Jacob's Ladder, and also the Kokoda Track Memorial Walk, which is really good training. So we spend a lot of time there, but there's some also great walks up in the hills. So Kalamunda, there's some stuff up there, and also down at Serpentine, Serpentine National Park around Jarrahdale. There's some really great hills down there. So I take people for training walks, and then I encourage them to go by themselves, and we might knock out 3 to 4 hour hikes using those hills if we can to prepare them.
Great. Okay, so it's definitely not a pay your money, rock up on the day and just do it. It's a full preparation months in advance. Yeah,
certainly from my perspective and my business, the day you sign up is when the journey begins for us.
Right.
Because it's not just a tick in the box; it's an emotional journey, and hopefully you can get to train with people as well that are going, and you form those bonds. And if you can form those bonds in the lead up and become friends with them, and then complete a hard task, so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling.
So how do people react once they've completed this just amazing feat?
Tears.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Tears, yeah. There's a lot of tears, and there's a lot of relief, a lot of hugging, and people just look back at the mountains. I tend to walk my track from north to south, so I finish at Owers Corner, and when you stop at Owers Corner and you turn around, you can see the mountains where you've come from.
Beautiful.
And so people turn around and they just look back and they just reflect and think, how the hell did I complete that in 8 days? And then they think, how the hell did our soldiers do that? And put themselves through that period of time. And I think a lot of contemplation at the finish. It's
probably a good thing, that turn around and reflect, and how do you really understand what our soldiers went through until you try something like that?
Absolutely. And I finished off the trip after Owers Corner, we finished the walk, we head down the hill and we visit Bomana War Cemetery.
Yep.
And so that's when it really hits home. And the minibus that we're driving down is full of joviality, and everyone's happy and they're chatting away. They're so relieved they finished the trip. And then we turn into the driveway
and cold
at that war cemetery, and we drive down, and then they look at this vast expanse of 3,779 graves. And then the bus goes silent, and then we spend a good period of time walking around the cemetery and reflecting and saying a few final words.
It all sounds really emotional. It sounds a lot more, like you said, mental than physical.
Yeah. The mental challenge is awesome. Because it's tough. Anything that's hard to achieve is so rewarding. And it is hard to achieve. Even for some of the fittest people, they can struggle. It's quite amazing. And under periods of duress and stress, that's when you see people at their best and their worst.
Yes.
I think. And often this is the hardest thing people ever do in their life, physically and mentally. So the relief they get is just spectacular. And to see them finish is, for me, that's the reward. I think every time I see someone finish, as long as they come out with the right attitude and they appreciate what's happened, I'm so happy. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I mean, you've been doing this for how many years now?
I've been guiding since 2011, so this will be my 8th year. And I've done 12 crossings with the track. Yep. And in 2019, we've got about 4 or 5 trips lined up. So, it's getting busy for myself now that I've got Kokoda Crossing up and running, which is fantastic. So my goal is to now increase the numbers, hopefully, and particularly from WA, my local provider, so it means that I can help people prepare from start to finish.
Or I must say, for somebody who's been doing this so long, you still seem really excited about it.
I know. It's incredible how that passion still burns.
Yeah. It's great to see. Most people after that time are like, oh, not again.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think people go there thinking that it'll be their first and last time. But it's amazing how many people come back. I've had several clients come back and do it twice, and I've had clients come back and do it 3 times, which I find amazing because it's a big undertaking. It takes time, and it's a couple of weeks out of a year. It's not a cheap exercise, so I appreciate that it costs money, and it's hard. You have to train for it and prepare for it. But the fact they come back, it just must mean that it resonates with people.
It sounded kind of like a tattoo, like you get it and you're like, oh, no, that's it. But you got the taste for it. You just got to keep doing it.
I know. Well, speaking of tattoos, it's not uncommon to come back. And I've had one fella, he got a tattoo on the top of his foot.
Ouch.
And that said, "Pax on," because that's a catch cry of our porters in the morning when we start our day. Another chap got a big tattoo down the side of his body with two diggers helping each other up a hill, a big tattoo. And a lot of people come home and get little tats as a reminder because it's such an amazing achievement.
Jesus, that's, to memorialise it on yourself like that, it must mean a lot to them to do it.
Clearly it does, definitely. To a lifetime tattoo, reminder of what you've done. It must really burn in their psyche, which is great. That means that hopefully I've done my job, is to help them learn that story and become a passionate ambassador for the story. That's one of the things that I say to everyone, that it's our responsibility to come home and continue the story.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
to tell the story. It's not just up to historians and the teachers at school to send this message out, but people who've done it have got to come home and spread the story and encourage everyone else to go across and see what it was like and experience it. So that's my hope.
I'm sure you're going to get busier too, the closer we get to the World War II anniversaries and the Kokoda anniversaries. Yeah,
I think so. There's more interest is growing. Numbers on the track are interesting. The numbers actually have dropped off over the last few years.
Oh, wow.
At its peak. Around about 2009, they estimate between 5,000 and 6,000 people had done the track during that year. But now we're down to around about 3,000.
That's a big drop.
People. It's a big drop, yes. So one of the things that I'm going to initiate this year to help encourage people to go is offer non-trekking tours as well. So you don't actually have to go and walk the mountains because there's so much history and other battle sites you can visit without actually doing that hard work. So, for example, on the northern beaches of New Guinea there, around Buna, Gonas and Sanananda, that's where the Japanese landed initially for this part of the campaign, and it's where they were finally defeated. So there's a lot of history in that area that we can visit. And so part of these non-trekking tours will be going to visit that history there and also going to visit the Kokoda village itself with the opportunity of walking up the track maybe 1 or 2 hours where it's fairly flat. But then you've also got Port Moresby, so we can go and visit the Bamana War Cemetery there and then take visits to, say, Parliament House, the National Museum, etc. So that's hopefully one of the ways I can help increase and encourage people to go is to take out that really physical component, because it is hard and not everyone will be able to do it for physical reasons, and I totally understand it. But if we can still have people go there to honour the history and other parts of it, then that'd be great.
You'll certainly open yourselves up to a bigger audience, younger, older people who, like you said, who don't have the physical capability to do the trek. Yeah,
definitely. We're increasing our market, definitely. So it's exciting. Yeah.
And it is a really important location in our history too, because, let's face it, that was the point where if they got there, they would have taken Australia.
A very, very strategic point. Yes, definitely very strategic. If the Japanese had taken Port Moresby, then that gave them a very strong launching ground to launch further attacks into Australia. Now, their plans probably weren't to invade Australia at that point, but they could still do a lot of damage. Because they wanted to really protect that southern flank of that empire that they were trying to create, which was the greater Southeast Asian co-prosperity sphere, which is what the Japanese wanted to put in place. And that would have had a very strong southern flank if they'd taken New Guinea, which would have prevented the Australians and Americans from pushing up north. So it was such a strategic battle, which I think also resonates with people as well, because it's closer to home.
Oh, very close.
Well, people don't realise how close it is. It's 160 kilometres from the top of Queensland there to Papua New Guinea, so it's super close.
Yeah, as someone from far north Queensland, I'm well aware how close it is, but anyone who hasn't been there, they wouldn't have an idea.
No, that's right. So, and also the thing that people don't realise is the amount of attacks that the Japanese put upon Australia in terms of air raids during that time. So it wasn't just Darwin that got bombed. Townsville got bombed. Broome, Port Hedland.
There's still remnants out there too. There's an old airplane still buried in the sea out that way. Yeah,
definitely. There's old dive wrecks and things you can go on. So the Japanese are very close.
Yes.
Very, very close. So strategically it was such an important campaign. And on the track we visit the battle sites, which had a fairly strong influence on how the campaign ended up.
Right, okay.
Particularly at a place called Ishirava.
Yep.
Which a lot of Australians would never have heard about.
No.
But that was a 4-day battle at this particular location, which really slowed the Japanese advance. And if we hadn't stopped them there at that point and held them up, then there was a very high likelihood they could have swept down to Port Moresby a lot quicker and taken Port Moresby quite easily. So these are the things I like to teach people when we go there, and we walk on those battlefields, we visit those battlefields. And Isharava is such an emotional place. There's a fantastic memorial there. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but there's 4 pillars.
Yep.
And it's a fantastic monument. And when people turn the corner, when they're walking through the bush and the trees part and there's this memorial of Isharava, they go, wow, look at this place. And the views down the valley are spectacular too.
I think is that the photo that keeps popping up on Instagram all the time?
It would be, yeah.
That looks amazing.
Yeah, it does. It is amazing. Yeah, definitely. So I've done a few dawn services at that location, and that's a great place for a dawn service as you see that sun rise over the mountains.
Yep.
And in the mornings, the valleys are often clear. It's the afternoons when it gets generally rainy.
Yep.
So in the mornings, it's really clear. And yeah, when you've got that dawn service happening there, it's a very emotional experience.
Are there any stories that you share on the track that get the biggest reaction, or you think people really abide to the most?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Isharava is a big one, but also the battle at Brigade Hill was another very, very... it was a sad battle. There's a lot of Australian casualties. But I would like to mention a particular guy, Bill Graydon.
Okay, yep.
Bill Graydon was from the 2nd 16th Battalion, and he still lives here in Perth. He had quite an extensive career as a politician post-war. I was lucky enough to meet Bill about 2 months ago, and he welcomed me, and his son James welcomed me round to his home, and we had a great conversation. So Bill Graydon, being in the 2nd 16th, was in the thick of all those battles.
Yep.
And he was fantastic to talk to, and he spoke about that particular Brigade Hill battle, which was particularly sad given the amount of casualties there. We lost between Brigade Hill and Mission Ridge, which is a battle nearby. 100 Australian soldiers were killed in that vicinity.
Yep.
But Isharava as well, which was just before Brigade Hill, was a really important battle too. And I do read out quite a few diary entries from there, which speak about some of the feats of these soldiers. And I can certainly read you one now if you
go for it.
Okay, so this particular story is about a chap called Corporal Charlie McCallum, and he was in the 2nd 14th Battalion based at Isharava, and this is what his citation read after this particular event. He won the Distinguished Conduct Medal at Isharava, so I'll just read this out. For 2 days to the 29th of August 1942 at Isharava, the 2nd 14th Battalion had repulsed attack after attack by the Japanese on our positions. Heavily reinforced after the initial stages, the Japanese attacks became heavier and more fierce each time. On the 29th of August, instructions had been given to the 2nd 14th Battalion that they must deny the area to the enemy, while the 39th Battalion and elements of the 53rd Battalion were extricated. The instructions included the order that the enemy would be held off at all costs. B Company was in a forward position on slightly raised ground overlooking the line of communication, which was the main track. 4 times during the day, the company had been forced off this ground, and each time they had counter-attacked and recovered the positions. Private Charles Reginald McCallum had participated in all these operations, and at 17:30 hours had been wounded 3 times, but he was still manning his Bren light machine gun and a Thompson machine gun he had acquired from a wounded comrade. At this stage, the enemy launched a particularly heavy attack. The fighting became extremely savage, with the forward posts being lost and won again. Finally, the weight of the enemy reinforcements prevented us from regaining the ground lost, and our troops were becoming increasingly exhausted. Private McCallum continued to provide covering fire with his weapons, and when at last the order came to withdraw, he remained behind to cover the withdrawal of his platoon. He had his Thompson machine gun on his left shoulder, and with his Bren stalled off enemy rushes, and when the magazine ran out and the enemy rushed him, he swung the Thompson machine gun forward with his left hand and sprayed the advancing enemy, checking them while he placed a full magazine in the Bren with his right hand. Having emptied the Thompson machine gun, Callum brought his Bren gun into action again and continued firing until all the troops in the platoon area were clear. The enemy was so close in one of these rushes on the position that one of them tore his utility pouches off as he wrenched himself away. Finally, members of his platoon called to him that they were clear, and McCallum came back, bringing both his weapons with him. Altogether, it's estimated that he alone killed 25 Japanese soldiers. At all times in the action, McCallum was admirably calm and steady. On this occasion, his utter disregard for his own safety and his example of devotion to duty and magnificent courage was an inspiration to all our troops in the area. His gallant stand and number of casualties he alone inflicted checked the enemy's advance and allowed the withdrawal to proceed unhindered and without loss.
Wow. I can't even imagine if you were on the track and hearing that story. That'd be really, emotional.
It's emotional. I get emotional reading it now, and I get emotional reading it on the track.
It sounds like a movie scene.
Yeah.
Like, that was real life.
Yeah, it does. It does. So when you go there, you learn about all these guys, and you learn about what they did. And the stories that we hear are only just a handful of what happened. There are plenty of stories and chaps like Charlie McCallum that sacrificed themselves, because Charlie McCallum actually died later on in the war, only a few days later at Brigade Hill. But there's a lot of stories that will always go untold because there's no one there to recall them.
Yeah.
So we're lucky to have the ones that have been recalled to appreciate.
This is why I always tell people, you've just got to share those stories.
Yep.
As it can be very hard to share those stories, but to get them down on the pages of history and so somebody remembers them, it's just so important.
Absolutely. And I think that is something to worth note for the soldiers nowadays. So the soldiers and the military personnel coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq, it's really important that we still hear the stories, because there's a lot of information that was around the World War I, World War II era that we don't know, but we do want to know. And that's why I encourage, if the military personnel want to, we very much encourage them to talk and tell their stories so we know what happened.
Yep.
And it helps people, I think, appreciate the sacrifices that we've made.
I say this to my dad all the time. I said, even if you think it's insignificant, it needs to be told and written down, because to somebody that's going to be significant information.
Oh, absolutely. And that's funny how some trekkers come to me afterwards and they recall a certain story that I told them. And for me it might be a minor story, but for them that resonated. That really got them. So you just don't know what's going to motivate people and what sticks with them.
Have you ever thought about writing a book about all this?
Look, there are a lot of books written already. There's some great reference material out there.
Yep.
Paul Ham, Peter Broon, there's some great books written. WA's Bill Edgar, he was another teacher of mine at Hale School. He's written a book on Brigadier Arnold Potts.
Yep.
And if anyone is in the Kojonup area and they're driving through, there's a fantastic statue of Arnold Potts in Kojonup, which is worth having a look at. Definitely.
There you go.
So I think there's a lot of material out there already been written. I think my role at this stage is to help people visit Papua New Guinea and visit these battlefields so they can see it for themselves.
Great. I am curious though, have you ever had any Japanese people come on the track?
No. I've heard of one Japanese couple that came into Kokoda with a helicopter and they visited a memorial and that was it, and they left. So it's actually quite sad in many ways, because the Japanese sacrifice, which shouldn't be forgotten, was immense, absolutely immense, but it just doesn't get spoken about a lot in their history. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's Japanese, and she said that she doesn't know anything about the campaign at all, and yet it's estimated that around 12 to 13,000 Japanese lost their lives just in that particular campaign alone. So for them, how they remember it is up to them, but there was a lot of sacrifice on their behalf which has been forgotten, which is kind of sad. I
mean, look, they were our enemies at that time, but they were just soldiers following orders as well.
Soldiers following orders, and they suffered immensely. Those Japanese soldiers at the end of the campaign, as they approached on the advance to Port Moresby, they were down to, they think, about 150 grams of rice a day, which is not a lot.
No, it's
and
nothing.
They were absolutely starving. And some of the autopsies that were conducted on the soldiers at the end discovered that they'd been eating bark and dirt and leaves just to get some sort of nutrition into them, because they were absolutely starving. So
doing the trek, doing that walk in that environment, in the middle of a war zone with nothing but bark in your belly, that's bloody heroic, that is. Jesus.
Absolutely.
Getting hungry just thinking about it.
I know. Well, fortunately, on our treks, it's not like that now, so we can start each day with a full stomach and finish the day the same. So not quite the same conditions as they went through, the soldiers on both sides, but we wouldn't want to have it that way, would we? No, you've got to take your creature comforts where you can get them. Most definitely.
This has been really fascinating, and I hope some people listening to this decide to go check up your information and decide to come along for a crossing. So where can people find information about you and the company?
Yes, so we're easily found. We're on the web, so kokodacrossing.com. We're on Facebook, have a Facebook page, and also Instagram. So all my contact details are there, and more than happy to talk to anyone. And also I'm happy to particularly help out with school students and schools. So if they want to have me come into the school and talk to them about this particular campaign and talk to the students, then more than happy to do so.
Great.
I think it starts with the young people. Really, it's really important for the young people to hear these stories.
Yeah, it is.
So they can learn, and hopefully show an interest in it, like we have, so the stories don't die.
100% agree. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure, Ashayla. Thanks for having me, and hope to see maybe yourself and plenty of other people over there in New Guinea with me.
One day, it's on the bucket list. Cheers.
Thank you.